Three friends boarded Disney's Galactic Starcruiser to seek their destiny and emerged as heroes of the Halcyon.
Right, Sun Starcruiser superfans, this is Heroes of the Halcyon, the best and only Starcruiser superfan podcast on the interwebs. I am Starcruiser superfan Martin, and with me, as always, are
Superfan Christine.
And Superfan Drew.
We have an absolute banger of an episode today for you. Drew, can you tell us about our special guest?
I can. We actually talked with TC Conway. TC is an immersive experience producer, and I became acquainted with TC by being a member of his group on Facebook, Reverse Engineering the Galactic Starcruiser. This is a Facebook group that anybody who's gone on the cruise needs to join and just dig in. There are tons of conversations about what's the dining room board like? What are the screens looking like? How do you think they're doing the technology that allows cast members to recognize who's been around them in a certain period of time? It digs into the minutia of how Disney is making the magic happen. And tonight we got to talk to TC a little bit about it. So let's take it away, TC.
Well, TC, tell us a little bit about your earliest Star Wars memory.
I have to admit that I've listened to every one of your podcasts, and everyone has an excellent answer to this question. And I'm probably going to have the worst answer to this question. So are you sitting down?
We are. We're
totally.
Okay, good. I was not a Star Wars fan. It's not that I didn't love Star Wars. I mean, I saw all the Star Wars movies in the theater. But at my teenage age years, I thought the movies were great. But I wasn't the guy that was like had the Star Wars sheets and the Star Wars pillow and the Star Wars comic books and the Star Wars this and this. That wasn't me. Not to say that I didn't enjoy Star Wars. I recognize that it was cinematic masterpiecery. But so I really wasn't into Star Wars at all. And it's a terrible, terrible answer considering where my mind is right now with the Star Wars universe. My first honest experience of Star Wars that I was like, oh, this is damn good, was Mandalorian.
Wow.
Of all things. I mean, I know very well I'm late to the game. And of course, hearing of the Galactic Starcruiser was kind of like the big ding in my head of how amazing this metaverse is. And I've since have gone way deep in, and my family thinks I'm the biggest Star Wars fan on the planet right now. It's embarrassing to say that I've only been so hyper passionate about these stories for a year and a half.
So like Karen Carpenter, you've only just begun.
Now you're dating yourself.
Yes, I am. It's true.
And it's been, a year and a half. It's been a crazy wild ride. I'm sure we'll talk about some of the things I've been working passion project wise on. It's almost endless. And it's it is an addiction right now.
It's actually kind of an interesting thing to come into Star Wars a little later in the game, because there's so much content to just lose yourself in right from the get-go. I mean, we had to wait as things came in.
Oh, yeah, to get into it now when you have this vast trove of stuff to dig into. That's incredible. Pretty cool, yeah.
And it was honestly, at the very, very beginning of this journey, if you want to call it that, it was almost fear because I wanted to be prepared, because I wanted to go in with a fully vetted character. I wanted to live that experience. I wanted to truly LARP this experience, if I could use it as a verb. So to do that, I needed to know what everything was. And I dove crazy deep. I watched every single movie twice, and I started reading books, and I started looking at comics. I was addicted. I was like day one of the Halcyon comics when they came out, just so I could really understand and talk the language and be as authentic in that universe.
So what has been your favorite medium so far?
If you take one thing out of this entire conversation, you'll probably take away that I'm like a technologist, and I'm a technology geek of all out. So Mandalorian was probably, it was my first like deep dive into the metaverse, and the technology behind that was kind of the biggest driving factor. So I was glued to that. And I think that's kind of a given answer too, because so many people are being reintroduced to the Star Wars universe from that. And then of course, other, the series that followed after that, of course.
Right.
And then closely following that were the comics. I've never been a comic person either. And now I'm kind of crazy into comics. And the Halcyon comics were great. Tons of spoilers in there, tons of, not spoilers, but Easter eggs in there, as you probably know.
Right.
And it was just, I think that was probably the second greatest medium, but obviously the TV series were good because, they were very readily available. They told that story in a very modern feel, and they were very relatable.
So this is kind of interesting. When they first announced Galactic Starcruiser, I mean, it didn't even have a name back then. I mean, that was when it was called, quote, and we all shiver at this, Star Wars Hotel.
Yeah.
But you weren't even into Star Wars at that point in time. So when was your first, when was it a blip on your radar that Galactic Starcruiser, or what would be Galactic Starcruiser, was a thing?
I heard about it in August of last year.
Okay.
And I think it was announced at D23 around that time.
Yes.
And I have a couple of friends that are in the industry and were kind of talking about it, but didn't name it. So I kind of knew it was coming, and it was September, honestly. That's when I heard about it, and I'm like, this is like totally my thing. It's what I love and live for. So I had to jump onto that. And then within maybe let's say October after that, after I basically decided, yes, I'm going. October, I'm like, oh no, I need to figure out what this is all about. I don't even know what the Empire is or means, or First Order. Who knows what First Order?
Second Order?
Yeah.
What's the Third Order?
Yeah, no, I had no idea. I mean, again, I saw the movies when they came out in theater releases, but I had no idea. I mean, yeah, are there Ewoks? That was probably the extent of my knowledge of it. So yeah, it was a very quick learn, long learn.
A deep dive.
So this is, I don't think I'm getting ahead of myself on this, but on my first cruise, I had I went very First Order, right? I was 100% committed to the dark side or First Order or whatever.
Sure.
And I had a pin on that was like a little like insignia, and it was the Empire, a logo for the Empire.
Okay, yes.
And I thought it was First Order. I didn't even know.
Right.
And one of the the crew members, I guess, she was inquiring about why I was wearing that kind of pin. She knew far more than I knew. And I'm like, I have no idea. It's the First Order pin. She's like, no, it's not.
Sir. Yeah.
Like, no, I'm sorry. I don't know. I had no idea.
Did she point at the Stellar and said, go?
She put it at the gift shop and said, go.
Oh, yeah.
Go.
Something right, yes.
Within this era.
Yeah.
Nice.
So you've been on Starcruiser twice now? When was your first voyage?
And a friend of mine is going the end of this October month, and I was that close to trying going on a third time, but my schedule didn't work out. So I'm a little miffed about that.
When was your first voyage?
April 4th, being in the immersive experience kind of space. I wanted to go very, very early on. And that was like a month, I guess, after it opened.
Yep, about a month, yeah.
And the reason I wanted to go so early is I wanted to see it in its purest form. The closest to what the designers had in their head.
Yes.
And so I didn't want it to evolve to a point where it's more operational as opposed to that like unique magic thing. So that's kind of, I wanted it. And that was the first I could go was April 4th. And it worked out. I went with my daughter, and we just had just mind blowing, as you know, you've been on, but it was just a mind blowing experience. The second you walk into that atrium, it literally took my breath away. And I think one of you actually said it in an earlier podcast, is the experience is also not just the couple of days you're on the ship, but the leading up to it, the building your characters, and thinking about strategy and talking to other people about what could be. And there was so much of that because we spent months, planning and preparing, and no one was on the cruise up until that point, up until, a month into. It was breathtaking walking into the atrium for the first time after all, 6 months of planning.
Right.
That's awesome.
So did you go with your daughter the second time as well?
I didn't. I went by myself, kind of. I went with people that I've never met before. There's a Facebook group, as there always is a Facebook group.
Yes,
right?
there is. Right.
There's a Facebook group, and I'm butchering the name, but it's Sweet Mate Finder.
Yep. We've heard about this. Yeah.
And it is singles looking to bunk up together, and in a very platonic way.
Yeah. Right. Sure.
It's like the rules are like, this is not a dating site, but it's just people who don't want to spend the $6,000 to go by themselves.
Right.
And so the second time I met up with a couple of people that I met over the internet, Mom, sorry, and had the best time because I had the freedom to do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted.
Sure.
And the second time, I don't want to say it was better, it was different, because the first one I was being a dad. And I wanted to make sure my daughter, who was 15 at the time, or is still, but 15, she wanted to make sure she was taken care of, and if she needed anything, and we had a great time. And then the second time I was by myself with these two newfound friends, again, over the internet. And it was a drastically different experience. I can't say it's better. I definitely can't say it's worse.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that happened in September. So that was not too long ago.
You mentioned that your background and your kind of your leanings are towards immersive entertainment. What's your experience with immersive entertainment that made this interesting for you and up your alley?
Immersive entertainment is basically glorified theater, right?
Okay.
So I've been a theater person, and I apologize to everyone out there who's just rolling their eyes at what I'm just saying, but it's entertainment, it's theater, right? And I've been in theater since I was like a wee little lad. From that, then it evolved to like alternate reality gaming, ARGs. Okay. And I was part of a group that did a ton of ARGs. And I know a lot of the big players that were in that space when the big, like I Love Bees. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yes.
But that genre, that era, I guess. So I was deep into that alternate reality gaming, and that evolved to like immersive theater. And that's what I do now is one of the things I do now is I produce these basically immersive theaters. My goal in life is to make you feel it's an agreement between you, the audience, and me, the producer or director, and saying, we're going to agree that this is reality. Mm-hmm. And that's my goal, is to make it feel as accurate and as real as possible. Whether it's simulations with a certain large company here in the DC area, I'm not, or like small groups that just want to do like everyone says, Sleep No More out of New York. That kind of experience where it's you start to question, in a good way, you start to question what's reality and what's like fantasy. And I think that's honestly was the biggest draw to Galactic Starcruiser for me, is they go way out of their way to try to make you feel like you're 100% legitimately on a spaceship. Mm-hmm. I mean, everything is, there's no Mickey Mouse. There's no Disney tag. I mean, there's tags, but there's no Disney branding anywhere. That doesn't exist. That's all Star Wars. So my biggest draw that's been my life, is to produce those types of experiences that really deeply immerses you as a player or participant, and you can live your own life or live a fantasy life, like a Sims life. It's crazy fun. It's crazy rewarding because people really get to play the life like Westworld, right? They get to play the life that they only read about in books and magazines and movies.
Yeah, now whenever I talk about the Galactic Starcruiser, immediately I say, well, it's like Westworld for Star Wars. And as soon as you do that, they're like, oh. And then one of my friends said, are there any hot robots? I said, no, except for that. If you think SK620 is hot, then, that's a little different. So, yeah.
SK is hot. I mean,
absolutely. Exactly. In doing the research for the show, I was typing your name and seeing what else I could find, and I happened upon your LinkedIn page, and I saw that you worked for Disney for a while. Or what's your background with Disney and maybe theme parks or interactive? You mentioned the immersive, but what's your background?
And again, it was all based on theater and film and TV and stuff like that. So and even film and TV are kind of like that, creating that immersive world, But back to your question. So Disney, I opened the Disney, at the time, Disney MGM Studios, now Disney Hollywood Studios, and I did special effects. I was the guy blowing up Indiana Jones 10 times a day. I was the guy rolling the the big crater up the hill 10 times a day. That's where I started doing all those special effects. We did tons of like outside of park hour events as well. And then I also did a lot of work at Pleasure Island too, which is now Disney Springs. Again,
so
everything
jealous.
I've worked there is gone. But so I did fireworks every single night. It was New Year's Eve every single night on Pleasure Island, and blowing things up. Doing lasers, doing video projection, doing TV and all sorts of stuff. So I was at Disney for 89 to 99 for about 10 years, and went all over the parks. I did the Here Come the Muppets. They shot there, and I thankfully I got to meet Jim Henson and got to work with him and Frank Oz. Yeah, when you see that show, Frank Oz Miss Piggy was flying the Y-wing airplane in the Indiana Jones show. So she's flying the airplane, and here's little old TC also in there as well. So Frank and I were basically spooning. In a very, very tight quarter, flying an airplane blind while Miss Piggy's shooting at the bad guys, and I'm have my hand over here flying the airplane.
That's great. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, crazy stuff. But it got me to I guess one of the points is that I mean, obviously Disney is an ever evolving company, but I got to see how Disney did things, and I was obviously frequently surprised that as a guest you look at it and it's like the Magic Kingdom, right? I mean, or Adventureland. Let's pick Adventureland or Jungle Cruise even. Mm-hmm. Jungle Cruise, it's so well thought out and flushed out, and it just feels very three-dimensional, right? But behind the scenes, it may not be. It doesn't feel as thick, if that's kind of a term that I could use.
Sure.
But it makes sense because from a business financial standpoint, you're not going to build the entire inside of the Millennium Falcon. You're just going to build the outside of the Millennium Falcon and put it out there, and it serves the purpose and it fills the need, right? But knowing full well that the inside may be just chicken. I mean, I'm not saying it is, but I'm giving you as an example. It could be just chicken wire and foam core, right? Or foam or whatever. And so that I'm trying to bring it back to Halcyon. Knowing that, I was really reluctant. I was going to go on the Halcyon. There was no question about it. But I was setting the bar really low because as a company that has stockholders or shareholders and, budgets they have to hit, it's not going to be as thick or as 3D or as virtualized as, and I was shocked that it was. It 100% felt real, but every other thing, knowing the backstage type of view of so much stuff at Disney, and again, it's not a negative statement at all.
Right.
But understanding that, when you go to see a theater play, it's not, backstage is going to be very simple. There's no need to have that authenticity out backstage, right? So I was expecting to be able to see behind the curtain a little bit and realize that, it's just foam core or just foam rubber on chicken wire and stuff like that. And it wasn't. Here's an example too. So this last time I went, I was on Rise and I was right past the Stormtrooper room, and my friends, my suite mates that I was going with, they're like, "Hey, we just got on Planet, come meet us." And I'm like, okay, fine. So I went to a cast member, in the first order outfits, right? And I said, I need to leave. And they're like, what? You just spent all this time getting... So they took me and I'm like, I have to leave. I have to leave right now. And they walked me around and they walked me eventually back behind where, and again, I can't remember his name. At the end of Rise, you're outside and you're driving toward this control area, and there's the guy.
Beck.
Lieutenant Beck.
So Beck's doing something there. We walked right behind it.
Okay.
And it was basically open. It was like the entire back of that was nothing, right? And that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's not the thick that I'm trying to describe.
Right.
Yep, exactly. Yes.
I'm like, that's what I expected.
Sure.
Like, why spend the money on something that no one's going to see or experience?
Yeah.
So, but again, Halcyon was the exact opposite of that. I was shocked.
another example that just when we were driving around the Starcruiser area the day before we got on it the first time, and specifically in Florida, Disneyland, it's the same kind of thing. In Florida, it's really obvious. You're driving down the freeway behind Hollywood Studios.
And you see the
spires.
you see the
spires
backside.
are just on sticks.
Yeah.
That you see, and it's just what an incredible. I love that actually because it's when you're in the park, the effect is complete. It's real.
Yes.
It's all there. You walk behind and you just see they're just spires straight up on sticks of different lengths and magic.
But you bring up a good point. It's like the magician is sharing his secret with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that I could see how you'd feel like on the on the DL, on the inside group, because, I can see that now.
So have you always been interested in theme park technology?
Yeah, because it's been theater, right? So like theater tech, that was my degree in college, was technical theater. And that's theme park technology is obviously an extension to that. So I'm all about like the immersive tech, about pulling off something that can't be pulled off, creating the impossible, things like that. I just finished a seance experience that's about to run in my local neighborhood, where I've built a box. I don't have the box available, but I built a box that is technically a Dybbuk box, which is basically contains a demon, and the box opens up and closes, and it's all technology, that
no demons.
Well, you never know.
Right.
But the beauty and my kind of mantra of like in technology for stuff like this is it has to be transparent. There's so much tech that's going on the Starcruiser. Some of it's obvious, video projectors, but some of the stuff is so transparent.
Absolutely.
It has to be transparent. You shouldn't have technology for technology's sake. And, you see so many companies do that, and Disney has understood that fine line of how far we can push the envelope, but yet still make it feel like there's nothing. No, there's nothing going on. It's just, So that I've always been about technology, whether it's, like I said, TV, video, immersive.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Starcruiser and about reverse engineering that, starting with the Facebook group. So how did that get started?
So I met several cruisers on my first voyage in April, and we started talking about like, how did they pull that off? How did they do that? How are things work? So that was kind of the genesis of the idea. So early April, that group was started, and I invited the people that were on my cruise, and I said, hey, come join this thing. Let's continue the conversation talking about the technology that we experienced, or the invisible technology, right, that we experienced. So that was kind of the genesis of the idea. And honestly, it was selfish in a way because I wanted to talk more about Starcruiser. Right?
We know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think we're in like mind there. But also talk more about like, how did they pull that off? It's interesting about that is that on my second cruise, I was talking with a cast member. I'll keep her name out of it, but she was amazing. She was talking about her experience as a cast member on the ship, kind of out of character almost, right? Before we even boarded. And she was like, yeah, there's some crazy people out there. This one person created this like reverse engineering Facebook group.
That's so great.
Oh, really? And she goes,
Tell me about
and
that
some of the things they say are so wrong. I'm like, really? Which ones are those? I would like to know. I came clean with her, and I told her, and we had a good laugh about it.
That's awesome. That's so great.
But yeah, I mean, we talk about technology. We talk about, please come reverse engineering the Galactic Starcruiser. We talk about technology, of course, that's expected, but we also talk about like just operational things. One of the earliest conversations was talking about our cast members actually sleeping on the Galactic Starcruiser, and that's obviously been debunked. But they were like, "Yeah, they are. No, they're not." There was really, really good conversations. Lots of really, really smart people. Tons of people like me in the immersive experiences, the producing of immersive experiences. So we're learning and we're gleaning. And I think one of the biggest things I'm excited about for the Facebook group is I'm hoping that it's going to elevate this level of storytelling so that it's not just a one and done, not just Disney, but anybody. I mean, yeah, I know there's LARPs out there, and I really hope that that group really spurs imagination on creating new types of stories, because God, I hope this is not the one and done. I mean, Halcyon is great. Galactic Starcruiser is amazing. I hope Disney does another one in another, what am I trying? Intellectual property. But please, anybody out there that is not Disney, let's do more. That's the end goal of that group.
Well, I love the conversation. So I joined, again, our cruise was in March. I found it probably not too long after it had been started. And one of the things that I really enjoy about the conversations on there is they're very civil. Unlike a lot of conversations on the web, you'll get people going, nuh-uh, nuh-uh. But there's a lot of, even the people who say, well, I happen to work on the Starcruiser, and you're really close on a couple things, and it's really cool to see this. You're a little far off on this, but it's very. I love the math, how you use the capacity for the atrium to, et cetera, et cetera, and it starts making you think about the different parts of the voyage that just like you said, I want to know everything about it, everything, and so to have a civil conversation where people are enjoying it as much as we are. That's so great on the internet. So I'm very thankful you created that group. So thank you.
I'm actually going to spin off something you just said, Drew, because that particular fact blew my mind when someone first brought it to my attention. Is for the listeners that haven't heard this, is that so much operationally what happens on Galactic Starcruiser is dependent upon, and the bottleneck is the capacity of the atrium. How many people can they legally put in that one single space, because everybody has to be there. So there's 100 cabins, but there's a physical person capacity that there could be 20 cabins purposefully left empty.
Right.
If they've hit the number of persons.
Yeah, that they're full. Yeah, exactly. So it makes you think of things in a different way, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. And again, that's the joy of the group.
So what is your favorite non-spoiler application of the tech aboard Galactic Starcruiser?
I will say the most impressive thing that I believe to be true is the bridge. The projection system that they're using on the bridge is phenomenal.
It is amazing.
I see a ton of projection systems. I do LED systems. I put content on projection systems all the time, right? Mm-hmm. And in the reverse engineering group, we've had many a discussion about what is really going on there. And there's been patents that it's not just a simple, throw some projectors up and call it a day.
Right.
There's some other things that are going on. There's patents that have been filed and approved and blah, blah, blah. And it's just, standing in front of the bridge. I mean, yes, it's beautiful. Yes, the buttons and all the consoles and stuff like that. But that projection system, man, is just... It's really, really well done. Congratulations to the people that worked on that.
That was such a huge question mark in my head. I mean, all of us, is that how are the screens going to look? Nobody knew. We went to Space 220, and those were good. We were just like, are they going to be a step above what they did at Space 220? And we just, yes, they are.
Yeah, they really are.
Yes.
Yeah.
In like different planes of view, too, like one in front of you, and you can't see a pixel anywhere.
No,
because those projections, you can always see like fades or pixels or stuff like that. You just can't see it. You just can't. The other part of that, I think, is worth mentioning is all of the other video screens on the ship. They're all in sync, and so when you're in your cabin, I don't know if you saw this on your cruise, but if you're in your cabin and the ship is going into hyperspace, you see it in your room.
Yeah.
It's all synced up. Like there's ship screens along the side in the atrium. And when something bad happens, you can see the result of that bad happens on those screens.
Yep.
It's all aligned and synced. I mean, that's not as grandiose of they could have not done that and everyone would have been thrilled and happy. Yeah. But the fact that they went that extra step just to really deepen that immersive experience is
Well, it's time for future Drew in that editing booth.
Well, yeah, except the way we do things now, it doesn't even have to be future booth. So Patty, our friend Patty is joining us in a week for our voyage, and she listens to the episode. So Patty, this is the time we need to turn the podcast off. But Patty, just so you know, in about 8 days, you get to listen to all of the podcasts now.
All of it.
So for those of you who don't want to hear spoilers, the rest of the episode, we are going to go spoiler heavy. So consider yourself warned.
Spoiler gates open. Well, TC, we know that on your first voyage, you went kind of heavy into First Order. What path did you take on your second voyage?
We are in spoiler territory.
We are indeed.
So
yes, we are.
I wanted to see in person the opening of the holocron.
Yep.
So I went, I was more agreeable with everybody, but I was really leaning toward Jedi.
Okay.
To the point where I dressed like a Saja.
Okay.
It was like 2 days before my cruise I realized I looked a little too much like a Saja. So I changed my costume so I wouldn't be a Saja. I was close enough. So yeah, I was all Jedi, but the first time when I went First Order, I was like yes to only Croy.
Okay.
And hard no to everybody else. And that I felt limited me a little bit.
Sure.
Because I was just the only person that would talk to me would be Croy at that point. This time around, was more agreeable and open, and I did some smuggler stuff, and I did some stuff with the captain and Lenka and SK, but I was really totally Jedi. I read the Tao of Jedi again to prepare myself to talk like that, and I totally embraced Jedi. I was a Saja. I was basically a Saja.
I think the Saja, just from a storytelling point of view, are such a great creation.
Yeah, oh yeah.
For Galactic Starcruiser, how to get Jedi on the ship without having Jedi on the ship.
Yeah.
It's genius.
Yep.
They
had to have Jedi. I mean,
yes,
without question. Even though it's there are no more Jedi, but you're right. I agree with you 100%. It's just brilliant how they folded that in.
So just because this has been a long-standing, and one of the first things I did for people who want to see online, a quick breakaway, one of the things I love about the reverse engineering group, TC, is the app that you coded that's basically it's a reverse engineering of the Datapad app.
It is. And it was all done manually. We haven't hacked anything. There's me and a couple of people. We're just developers. And we screen grabbed all of the Datapad interactions. And in this last cruise I did in September, I probably had 100 different videos of my screen.
Okay, wow.
Just capturing, because it's more than, again, more spoilers, but when a character asks you a question, he or she gives you probably 3 answers, sometimes 4 or sometimes 2, but usually 3 answers. And I wanted to capture all 3 of those answers. And then because there's so many branches in this story, it's just really unwieldy. So I have like gigs of video captures of that. And then it's the manual process of viewing all of those videos and typing them into code. And then
getting it set. Well, it's very impressive. So again, people, if you get a chance, go to the Facebook group and check that out because it's so much fun. Well, one of the first things I did, because on our upcoming voyage, we don't want to go Saja heavy. We want to go more resistance heavy, but we want to know about the Saja experience. So I'm curious, did you find any early missions from the Saja on the first night, or was it more of an interaction? Or
the Saja is really hard to pin down, I thought. And again, to kind of answer that question, if I went a third time, I wouldn't do Saja. Not because I did it.
Yeah.
But because they're really hard to pin down, because a lot of their interactions are when they're not doing lightsaber training, they're oftentimes hanging out if they're on stage, they're hanging out in the climate simulator. Right. So it's to try to find them. It's always kind of a challenging thing. I mean, yes, they're in the atrium in certain times and they're in other places in certain times, but it's a hard path to follow, in my opinion. I think there's a lot easier paths out there.
So what led you to the Saja missions on Batuu then?
We're back to tech now. I don't know if you knew this, but there is some tech that if you are interacting with a character, the character can push a little secret button on their person, And there is a Bluetooth low energy, I believe is the tech. I'm not 100% confirmed on it, but if I was going to do it, that's how I would do it. And I've seen it in action. But back to your thing is like, how do you get the Batu things? Is you basically talk a lot with the Sasha and then become and do the yes, whatever you want to do. I'm really within talk their language. You can probably easily guess what their intents are. And as long as you vocalize that intent to them, then they reach under their little belt and push that little button. And because you're close to them and because you're wearing a transmitter on your wrist, it captures that and it adjusts your favorability with that character. So that's honestly one of the best ways to do it is to just be very active and just go out and talk to them. It's not.
And that was one of the things when we went again after. So I'd hung around Sammy and I immediately saw my familiarity went up and I was like, oh wait, does he just is it just being around the character?
Yeah.
Is it proximity? Exactly. And then we're like, well, it can't just be proximity because then how long you'd have to be there for like 10 minutes? I mean, yeah, so that's been I'm so excited to go back and check it out.
That actually allows them to give targeted proximity because there's people that kind of follow them around that they want to say, okay, that person, genius. Yeah, that's good.
And
invisible to everyone that's not specifically watching for that act.
Right. Yep.
So TC, speaking of characters, did you create a specific dedicated character for either or both of your voyages?
I did. I basically used a very similar character, and I based it on myself because I wanted the acting, if you will, to be effortless. Not that I was going to be on stage and stuff, but I just wanted to be that character, and I aligned that character as close to me. So yes, I created basically the same character, but with different personal motivations. So that allowed me to be like a Jedi or allowed me to be heavy First Order, but then tied it into what I live and breathe, which is technology and like that stuff. So I worked for, Chandrila Starline and I was a designer for cruise ships and I put systems together. And that's just what I do. And honestly, that's what I've been doing between cruises. How about that? So I've been redesigning, like you said, with the data pad. I've built 60% of that, recreated 60% of that. I've redrawn all of the engineering consoles. I've rebuilt all of the graphics from the bridge training. I've built the Chandrila Starline font. The one that's like, the customized font that's on the ship that's everywhere, that's nowhere to be found, but I redrew the thing from scratch. So it's all of that kind of like engineering and technology type of thing. So yeah, there's lots of discussion in some of the other Facebook groups too about just go as yourself. Just if you're going to wear shorts and flip-flops, knock yourself out. I agree, but I had so much more fun with a customized character that he was in world and was there for a reason, not just to be like Mickey Mouse Cruise. It's worth it. It's super valuable. And not only did I do that, but I did it for months, right? I toiled and struggled and had lots of pains about designing a costume and a backstory and a reason. And I had to learn what CSL was, and I had to learn what cruisers were, and I had to learn why, the journey was probably almost, if not more fun than the cruise. If that's hard to believe.
No, it's totally believable.
It's totally believable.
Right? You're kind of living that too, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. But again, if you want to rock some flip-flops and a Mickey T, knock yourself out. It's not going to bother me. I don't care what you do. You do you. But man, I had so much fun. I think, like I've heard you guys say in the past too, is like so much fun building those characters, and now you're part of the bigger story. You know?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And we've tried to say before too that we understand the apprehension.
Yeah, sure.
If this is not something that you do on a daily basis, and you're not involved in interactive games or in theater or any of that kind of stuff, and you don't have that background, trust me, I understand going on the ship and thinking that you're just gonna strike up a conversation with a character and just run through 48 hours with them is like, that's not happening.
Yep.
Until you just let yourself go, and I think the costume is a big, big part of it. that if you can just even focus on the costume and go as yourself, you'll still feel more immersed in the experience than you would in the Mickey T and the flip-flops. But you do you.
I mean, the best, really the best analogy is it's Total Recall. Take a vacation from yourself.
Sure, nice.
That really is the best analogy.
Yeah.
I had a 45-minute conversation with a cast member named Zoe. Zoe, if you're listening, I love you. So we talked again, this is newbie about Star Wars, but she knew so much. And she was the one who called me out on that like First Order Empire pin.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh yeah, it's my grandfather. She means you're great. I'm like, oh yeah, whatever. But we talked for 45 minutes in character. And it was an amazing experience. And I don't think she would have gone as deep if I wasn't in costume.
Right.
She would have, so it's not to say that they're going to exclude you in any way, but it's just, I mean, if you're going to go all in, do it. But I understand if you just want to rock the flip-flops.
So what were some of your favorite parts of either voyage? Was there a favorite part as far as one of your paths were concerned, or just a favorite even atrium or dinner experience?
I was at the Sublight Lounge having a cocktail, as you do. And this was on the first one. And it was probably the most amazing experience I think I've ever had on the Starcruiser, both times. And Wraith walks up to, and there was like 5 people in the bar in the Sublight Lounge, right? It was me, 2, 3 or 4, 5 of the people. And Wraith walks up to me. And, he's the talent manager. So he has that little bit of sleaziness to him, which is so cliche of a talent manager. And he played it so perfectly. He came up to me and squeezed my shoulder. And he talked to me a little bit about the kind of whatever the name of that stone. And we talked for like 10 or 15 minutes. And it was so like authentic and organic and casual. And I mean, looking back now, talking to you guys, I'm like, yeah, he's an actor. He's being paid to be there. He's being paid to do what he just did with me.
Yeah.
But it just didn't feel that way at all. No. It was so authentic and it was so in character and so real and so, I don't know how other so adjectives I could use, but it was just an amazing, amazing, amazing experience. And it was just probably a casual 10-minute conversation to him, but it made such a big difference because, you would never do that in theater, or you'd never see that in a movie, or it's the only place that could have ever happened. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know how to describe it any better. And I feel like I'm just destroying it, but it was such a magical experience like that. And then the last one, it was kind of similar. The Saja and I can't remember his name. It was a guy he has a beard, okay. But we had a moment like that as well. And it's just the character, the actors here make this experience. Yeah, I don't know. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely.
TC, everyone that's been on Starcruiser is nodding their head to everything you just said.
That is literally what I was thinking. Precisely what I was thinking. There's however many people listening to this episode who've gone and who are, yep, we get it. We totally get it. So
but it's mentioned weird because if you say, "Oh, I went to this restaurant and the waiters are great," I mean that's so far from the reality what we're talking about here. But it's kind of like that's what we're saying, but it's so true,
right?
I saw a show on Broadway. I'm like, oh, the actors were great, but not to the level of this. The fact that like Croy and Ray, again, we're in spoiler world, right? Croy and Ray are having a fight in the hallway. And it felt so real, but I'm sure it was not scripted. It couldn't have been scripted because they were interacting with each other so well. I'm sure the story points were, but it just felt so real. And I've been around theater all my life, and I've seen quote unquote air quotes real, and it wasn't like that. It was legitimately authentic and real.
Well, so many people have talked about stories like that where it's personal. That's the difference, is that you can be in the atrium and you can be enjoying a story beat and thinking, wow, this is really cool. And, I love seeing the captain and Lenka and blah, blah, blah. And it's all great. But it's when somebody catches you in the hallway or in Sublight Lounge, and it's just the two of you. And really, they don't have to do that. I mean, he could have simply walked through the lounge and gave everybody a hi and a nod and whatever and walked out, and he still would have collected his paycheck for the day. But that's the difference, is that they are so passionate about what they do that they understand it's not just for you, it's for them too. You know, they found somebody that wants to play on their playground, and they're so excited that they're willing to go there with you.
Isn't that interesting too? Because he knows he's lying. Let's call it that, right?
Yeah, sure.
I know I'm lying. We both know we're lying to each other,
Right.
but we're still agreeing and nodding and saying, yes, we're still going to do this. And it's still an amazing experience.
Right.
Yep. Well, the example that I was going to talk about real quick is, you mentioned you were in the Holocron, and I'm looking forward to chatting about that more later, but that experience was, I mean, it was otherworldly. And that too, you mentioned personal, Christine. This isn't quite as personal because there's probably, 15, 20 people. I don't know how many were in with you, TC, but it still is so intimate and so Yoda was talking to me. He was talking to me. So yeah, it was incredible.
I was just thinking back in that because when I saw it last time, this last cruise, and I didn't feel like, I couldn't tell you how many people are in the room.
Oh, wow.
Right.
I really couldn't, because it was just me and Yoda. And it's not like I grew up with Yoda,
right,
and he was an icon and he meant some. It didn't. It was the invisible technology. It just felt like it was a one-on-one interaction. It was so magical.
So we've kind of been talking around it, but what is your favorite spoiler application of Tech on Board?
The Jedi, there is a moment in the, I saw it. I wasn't actively part of it. And I knew the technology. I knew what was going on. I knew how it was triggered. I knew all of this stuff. But there was a little kid that was in the climate simulator, with two Saja. Do you know about this experience I'm about to describe?
I do know, a little bit about it. But
have you seen it?
I haven't seen it in person.
Not in person.
So I got to see it. I wasn't the person part of it, but the Saja, I don't want to give too much away, but I know we're in spoiler world, but the Saja says so many amazing things about the Force and life force within us and stuff like that. And then tries to test that Force positive actions with this kid. And the kid basically moves a rock. I think we all know the technology, what's going on. It's a simple technology. It's even how it's triggered is as simple. It's nothing magical in a way, but the way that they pulled that off, it kind of goes back to the characters again, the actors again, but it was magic looking at you. That was kind of the big, wow, what did I just see? And this kid totally believed it.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
8-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And she just totally believed it. She screamed. It freaked her out. That and then the holocron thing at the end couldn't. I mean, I knew exactly how they were doing it. It was very clever, very smart. I saw some artifacts. It was because it's a video projection of Yoda talking, right? But you can see the projection on the ceiling. But again, the way they pulled that off, the technology is just so transparently beautiful. Technology for it's pure magic. It's just amazing stuff. So go be a Jedi if you've never seen that.
Yeah.
It's worth the time. Different things. And then if I could add a third one, there is, let's call it a logic engine that kicks in at, I think around 11 o'clock on day one. It sorts you into which path you're going to do on the next day. And I think it's around 11-ish or whenever the stage manager, I don't think it's automated. I think the stage manager pushes some buttons. I could be wrong, but it sorts you into based on your interactions. How often did you spend with Croy? How many times did Croy push this little button on his belt? How many missions did you agree to on day one? So that is nobody knows about it, but it's this logic engine, or it's a game engine. that basically sorts you like a Harry Potter kind of sorting hat. Puts you in and that logic engine just basically crunches some numbers based on your experiences and sorts you in that. And that's crazy impressive. No one's going to ever talk about it, but that's patents should be won on that, and people should get raises and bonuses because they built that and they're still building it. Right.
Yep.
It's just a marvel, I think. And no one, again, will ever see it.
So are there ways that you can see where Disney can improve their use of the tech on Halcyon?
There's two ways I can see they can improve. I don't know how much it goes on tech, but I think this is probably mentioned in another podcast, and I was that listener nodding my head frantically as I'm driving my car listening to. Day 3 is there's no character interaction. Not that I want to have more character interactions, which I do, but it was like a full stop,
right?
And it was like. It was a jarring full stop for me.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Yeah, we're having breakfast, but the story's over, the world's saved, blah, blah, blah. But it was too abrupt of a stop for me. I wish there was a softer way. I wish I could have hugged the characters more if that's it.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
There's a little bit of that at the end of day 2. I got to, do some interactions with like Lenka and stuff like that. But and the Saja, of course. There's a little bit of thank you there, but it just didn't. I wasn't, not that I wasn't ready for it to be over and stop my vacation, but it was more of such of like we're gonna have breakfast and get off the ship in a polite way.
Right. Yes.
There should have been that. And then the second thing, kind of opposite, is before the cruise. There's this rich, immersive story that's happening on the ship, and you just basically show up, like scan your badge. They give you an M band, then you scan it in, do your finger, and then you walk in. I would have loved to see a story kind of slowly start. And they're kind of doing that with the data pad, right? Because CSL announcements gives you like there's here, all passengers, please be advised that Chandrila Starline is currently under investigation by the First Order. I'm like, well, flush that out some more.
Sure.
Right.
It could be a couple of more of those messages, like teasing. It's like a prequel of what's about to happen. And again, use technology for that, and don't limit yourself to the data pad. I mean, there could be, I don't know. I mean, but there could be something that just starts that story instead of just saying, "Oh, the ship's under watch." I mean, come on, make it a little bit deeper of a story. You've spent so much time, so much money doing this hugely deep story, hugely immersive, interactive, one-to-one personal connection story. But you don't start it and you don't end it.
Right.
Yeah, and if they had, I mean, even one of the things that I've now read the Halcyon Legacy twice all the way through, and that supposedly takes place like a month before,
roughly a month,
the 275th. So even if they had some sort of mention, you may have heard about our run-ins with Crimson Jack and his band of ne'er-do-wells or whatever. If they had something that kind of let you know that there was a little bit more before, precisely like you're saying, TC, that there would have been a nice entryway into the story. That would have been cool.
Like, for instance, when you're in the staging area before you get on the shuttle and they got the screens up, you're watching the screen. I mean, they really could have a 2 or 3 minute primer on what's going on in the universe.
Oh yeah, or a video screen, or talking about the history of CSL. Yeah,
bingo. A 2 or 3 minute thing would really help kind of get people into that space in their head.
And the intro video is like, if there's an actual emergency, here's what it looks like. That's their point of it. But to your point is like, start the story even there, right?
Yeah.
And even there are rules, if you want to call them that, there are rules to play this, really immersive. Like go talk to the characters and stuff like that. And that would have also been a good time to kind of loosely tell you those rules.
Oh, sure.
You know what I mean? I think what they're doing now is they're putting did they do this on your cruise where they put a letter on your bed? So when you got into the cabin, it's like, here's some tips.
Yeah,
I vaguely remember something like that. Yeah. But it's been so long.
Yeah, that's you bring up a great point. Is to start that story early in that little briefing, and make that be like a welcome. Here's what you're about to experience. It's an amazing cruise.
Right.
We've been around it's our 275th birthday. We've just come out of dry dock.
Well, TC, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. This has been a fabulous conversation, and as I've said several times in previous episodes, there were like 18 or 19 different topics that I wanted to discuss, and this was one of the ones that was right up on the list from day one, and the great thrill of my life has been doing this experience and talking to folks like you, so thank you so much.
Thank you to all three of you for just like spreading the good word about, Halcyon, in hopes that we cruise again, but also other people are doing more of these types of experiences. It's been great. So thank you all for your hard work. It's been great.
Well, thanks so much to TC Conway. What an incredible peek behind the curtain at how the magic happens on Galactic Starcruiser.
We were giggling like school children on this side just because everything he was saying was like, oh yeah, I know exactly what that's like.
And it's just even the personal recollections of the little character moments that he has. And it's so funny that so many people think that they're no one will understand. And I'm going to tell you that everyone that's on listening to Heroes of the Halcyon gets exactly what he's talking about the big moments, the small moments. What a fun guest.
Yeah, and the insight I really enjoyed is how he saw the backside of Beck when he walked off Rise of the Resistance, and he pointed out, that's an example where maybe Disney doesn't need to put a lot of money into creating that, but when you go on the Halcyon, there is no backside of Beck. It's the whole thing is just created and real, and from the actors to the experience to the technology to the actual construction of the ship itself.
Something else I really want to send a quick message out to all of our listeners. We have received so much support and communication from you this past week about our upcoming roundtable episodes. We've actually had to expand our plan. We can't just do one listener roundtable episode. We're actually expanding it to 2 and possibly more, depending on how many folks want to jump in. But we've received a lot of emails, you wishing us well on our upcoming second voyage, just giving us your stories, your tips and tricks, and really just a lot of people just saying thanks for doing what we're doing here at Heroes of the Halcyon. So thank you so much for taking the time to show your support. So Christine, if these folks want to find us on the interwebs, where would they do that?
You can always reach out to us at heroesofthehalcyon@gmail.com, or you can find us on Instagram at Heroes of the Halcyon, or on Twitter at Halcyon_heroes, or on YouTube at Heroes of the Halcyon. We are collecting everybody's ideas and emails, and we'll be responding back to you once we get back from our trip and start putting together plans for our first and second roundtable.
Well, that should do it for today, and boy, it's been fun shooting the poodoo with all the Starcruiser superfans out there. So until next episode, it's our honor. Let's raise our glasses with the Halcyon toast. Tabooite!